Hey everyone! So glad to see you back tonight. We're headed somewhere hot, loud, and incredibly well documented. Ancient Babylon, where you're about to spend an entire day as a livestock accountant. I hope you've got good shoes and a high tolerance for manure, because this job is not for the faint of heart. You'll be handed a piece of wet clay, a sharp stylus, and asked to count mooing, stomping, occasionally aggressive cows, all while avoiding catastrophic math errors and very real taxes. Oh, and the cows. They don't want to be counted. You might think it's just a sleepy job, but Babylonian bureaucrats could ruin your whole week if you so much as mistook a goat for a heifer. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is it where you are right now? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up with the pink hue of morning brushing across mud brick walls. The Tigris is a sluggish shimmer in the distance, and your sandals stick slightly in yesterday's cow droppings as you trudge across the pasture. The smell hits you instantly: sun-warmed manure, damp reeds, and a surprising note of cooked onions drifting from a nearby vendor. It's census day at the cattle yard. The livestock are corralled into dusty pens, dozens upon dozens of cows, calves, oxen, and a few disgruntled goats pretending to be cows for tax reasons. They low in chaotic harmony, each adding their own stubborn vibrato. You are expected to catalog all of them. Every single one. A foreman waves a lazy arm. Start with that pen, he grunts, clearly thrilled to be supervising and not scribbling. He tosses you a hunk of clay, still cool from the riverbank, and a wedge-shaped stylus. It's a poor tool for nuance, better suited to stabbing than writing, but it's all you have. You press your thumb into the clay's edge to mark the beginning. That's how the scribes do it, you think. Or maybe it's just to keep the clay from slipping. The cows, meanwhile, couldn't care less about your existential uncertainty. One flicks its tail at your face. A fly dives into your nostril. The sun is already climbing, casting long golden bars across the field. You begin your slow approach to the first beast. It's big, brown, possibly angry. You try to look authoritative. It blinks at you with alarming disinterest. Mainstream historical fact. Ancient Babylonian record keepers were incredibly methodical. Livestock inventories have been found on thousands of tablets, each with standardized symbols indicating species, sex, age, and purpose: plow, milk, meat, temple sacrifice. Some tablets even noted branding marks or feeding habits. You etch a simple symbol for cow, a wedge with two vertical lines and a squiggle that might be horns. At least you hope it's the right symbol. The scribes yesterday explained it quickly, and you were distracted by a goose attack. Your stylus drags through the damp clay, forming the symbol awkwardly. You try again. This one looks better. The cow doesn't react. You briefly fantasize about a world with paper and pencils. Quirky tidbit. In some cases, Babylonian scribes used cow-related words metaphorically in insults. One clay tablet includes the line, "Your accounting is like a calf with two heads, confused and unnecessary." After half an hour, you've tallied 6 cows and lost feeling in your crouching knees. The sounds around you blend into a strange bovine orchestra, some high-pitched moos, some grumbling bellows, and one suspiciously human-sounding groan from the supervisor who forgot breakfast. You glance up to see a scribe in long linen robes, watching you from the shade of a wall. His arms are crossed. He raises an eyebrow as your stylus wobbles mid-symbol. You smile weakly. He doesn't smile back. He strolls over sandals, squelching softly. "That's a bull, not a cow," he says dryly, pointing with a long nail. "You used the wrong wedge. That squiggle means milk, not horns. Unless your bulls lactate now." You blink. It was facing away. The scribe smirks. So are you, apparently, from accuracy. Open scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether Babylonian scribes followed a universal symbol set or if regional variations existed. Some believe city temple complexes had their own unique pictographs and tally methods, meaning your tablet might make sense here, but look like gibberish in Nippur. The scribe walks away muttering something about rookies and ruined ratios. You glance at the bull, who seems pleased to be misgendered if it gets him out of the temple pen. You wipe the edge of your stylus and start again. You'll get it right this time. Or at least right enough that no priest comes knocking at your door demanding back taxes in barley. Somewhere behind you a goat bleats indignantly. You pray it's someone else's problem. The clay is drying faster than you'd like. Every time you pause to double-check a wedge or scratch your scalp with the non-pointy end of your stylus, the surface hardens just enough to make the next line jagged. Your hands are caked in dust and dried slip. You're pretty sure a fly has died heroically in your left ear, but there's no stopping now. You're knee-deep in cow chaos. The second pen is livelier than the first, larger animals, sharper hooves, more defiant attitudes. These cows have opinions. One snorts when you make eye contact. Another seems to whisper about you to its neighbor, as if it knows your tablet has already included 2 duplicate entries and 1 unknown hoofed entity. Just as you're squinting at a particularly shaggy cow and debating whether it's pregnant or just chunky, a gruff voice calls out, "Need a stylus, you turn." It's one of the senior scribes, tall and thin as a reed mat, wearing a robe more patched than woven. His sandals flap with every step. He carries 3 styluses in a pouch, one of which he twirls between fingers like a dagger. His name, you recall, is something like Ninurta or Nin-Irk. You're pretty sure it means totally overqualified. "Mine's fine," you mutter, not wanting to owe him anything. He peers at your tablet. Looks like it was scratched by a drunk goat. "That goat is unionized," you say, and he smirks just a little. Mainstream historical fact. Babylonian scribes didn't just write, they were administrators, archivists, accountants, and sometimes even legal officials. Their training took years, and their script cuneiform could contain over 600 distinct signs, depending on dialect and domain. Livestock records were considered one of the more mundane but essential parts of daily administration. "You writing cow or spiteful demon with hooves?" the scribe asks, squinting at your latest entry. "Depends how the taxman interprets it," you reply. He nods, impressed by your cynicism. "Good answer. Quirky tidbit. Some scribes allegedly developed shorthand or personal flourishes to speed up repetitive work, leading to an unofficial scribal slang that modern researchers are still trying to decode. Some symbols may have been inside jokes, like a cow with unusually long horns, that secretly meant, "Don't trust this tally." Your stylus tip splits slightly. "It's probably the clay, too coarse maybe, or too dry." You chew the edge like you've seen the others do. It doesn't help. It just tastes like someone else's sweat and river mud. A new cow barrels toward the pen, chased by 2 yelling teenagers with sticks. The cow crashes in kicks over a half-full water basin and spins in a wide, panicked arc. Everyone ducks. You shield your tablet with your body clay, cracking a little beneath your grip. The teenagers laugh breathlessly. One of them shouts, "Mark her quick, she's number 29. You look down at your half-erased squiggle for cow number 17. Great. That's when a small stampede starts. It's not dramatic, just 4 cows deciding they no longer believe in fences and pushing their way into the next pen over. The sounds blend into a muddy percussion of hooves on packed earth, startled bleats, and one oddly melodic fart. "Perfect," you sigh. Day's going great. Open scholarly debate. Scholars still question how Babylonian scribes ensured accuracy in open-air environments with living animals. Some believe there were assistants who verbally confirmed counts, while others argue that backup tablets were drafted later indoors. No consensus exists on whether field scribes were expected to memorize and rewrite tallies nightly. You kneel beside a calmer animal, this one white with faded markings across its back. You pause. Wasn't this one already counted? It looks familiar, but then again, so do most of the cows after a while. Maybe you're looping. Is there a symbol for possibly duplicate cow, you whisper. The scribe overhears. No, but if you draw a tiny foot next to it, that usually means check again tomorrow. Or it might mean cow with a limp. Depends on your confidence. You nod solemnly and draw a tiny foot. The sun climbs higher, a pale coin in the dusty sky. Someone nearby coughs into a cloth. Another scribe hisses a curse as their tablet crumbles from dryness. You kneel on a cracked leather mat, adjust your tunic, and brace your stylus again. Behind you, Ninurta chuckles. They don't tell you this in training, do they? It's all learn Sumerian logograms and memorize Akkadian syntax. No one warns you about blisters, sunburn, and cows that moon you mid-glyph. You laugh softly despite yourself. A shared misery is somehow less miserable. He kneels beside you, showing his own clay slab. His handwriting, if you can call it that, resembles perfect rows of divine teeth. Notice the spacing, he says. Leave a thumb width between columns. And keep your bulls and cows in separate registers, unless you want a priest asking why one's milking the other. You nod. This is the closest thing to mentorship you've had all day. He stands, stretches with a groan, and leaves you to it. You breathe, press stylus to clay, and try again, better spacing, clearer symbols, and maybe one less accidental goat. By now, the scent of cow has become your personal atmosphere. It's not just on your skin, it's in your pores, under your fingernails, and probably lodged forever inside your nostrils. You could bottle this and call it Eau de Livestock. You doubt it would sell. Your back is stiff from the squatting. Your stylus hand cramps like it's been cursed by a bored temple priest. But you're still counting, still carving, still deciphering the subtle moods of cows. And as the sun crests high overhead, painting the dusty paddock in tones of baked gold, you're joined by a trio of what you now consider the cool scribes. They arrive in a slow-moving group, robed, relaxed, and already chewing something that smells suspiciously like fermented date paste. Their tablets are tucked under arms, styluses jammed behind ears, like weapons of quiet authority. One of them, the one with the extra earring and the perpetual smirk, grins at you like you're today's entertainment. New guy, he says, mouth half full. I'm 2 pens in and already reconsidering literacy, you reply. He howls with laughter. The other two sit cross-legged nearby and begin to work almost casually, like they're sketching leisurely cow portraits instead of performing state-mandated livestock census duties. Mainstream historical fact. In Babylonian society, scribes occupied a high-status position. They were educated in adubus scribal schools where they spent years learning how to read, write, and calculate. Despite the grunt work, their literacy gave them access to temple employment, administrative positions, and even influence over trade documentation and taxation. The earring guy, let's call him Gula because you heard one of the others call him that, and it sounds like someone who enjoys gossip, leans over to glance at your work. You use the left horn curve symbol for that cow, he asks. You hesitate. It had a left horn curve. He raises an eyebrow. But she's branded for temple sacrifice. They don't record horn direction on those. Too holy. You squint at the cow in question, now chewing cud and glaring at a fence post. She looked very secular, quirky tidbit. In some temple ledgers, sacred animals weren't described by physical traits at all, but rather by symbolic qualities like blessed lineage, divine color, or docile under moonlight. Scholars debate whether this was poetic flair or bureaucratic smokescreen. Gula grins. Relax. Everyone gets one wrong. I once marked a donkey as a barley loan repayment. Was it accepted? They sacrificed it anyway, he says with a shrug. Either way, someone got fed. You laugh, but it's short-lived. A sudden gust of wind picks up the top layer of dust and throws it into your face like an offended spirit. You cough, blink grit out of your eyes, and smear a symbol halfway down the clay. Gula tosses you a damp cloth. Use that to clean the stylus, or your soul. You wipe the stylus first. Priorities. Open scholarly debate. Researchers are still uncertain about how standardized Babylonian livestock recording truly was. Some clay tablets show neat tabulated records with clear categories and spacing, while others resemble frantic shopping lists written during a sandstorm. The degree of central control over scribal methods remains unclear. The three scribes beside you fall into an easy rhythm, sometimes chatting, sometimes humming strange little work tunes that sound like lullabies crossed with math problems. You try to match their pace, and for a moment, just a moment, you feel like you belong. A cow sneezes wetly in your direction. The feeling fades. Someone brings over a shallow tray of dates and bread wrapped in a reed leaf. Gula grabs a piece and waves the rest toward you. Lunch. But don't get crumbs on the tablets. That's how ants invaded the archive last year. You take a date, chew slowly, and try not to think about ant-infested ledgers. The sun begins its slow descent, shifting from punishing white to forgiving amber. Long shadows stretch like lazy cats across the pens. The cows grow more still, more docile in the late-day heat. You wonder how many of them realize their data now etched into clay, destined to be read and reread for generations, or maybe buried under temple walls and forgotten. You're mid-symbol when a shout cuts across the yard. Oi, someone mark this one twice. A younger scribe waves a clay slab, red-faced. This cow's in my column, and in his. Everyone pauses. Gula frowns. Describe the cow. Brown, big ears, scar on left leg. Half of them look like that, someone mutters. They bring the actual cow over. The poor beast looks bewildered, then flops down in the dust, like she's given up on human logic. A small committee forms 5 scribes surrounding one cow, all comparing tablets and arguing about wedge orientation. You glance over, grateful that for once it's not your mistake. Yet. Eventually, the committee agrees one of them was looking at a shadow and marked an extra cow. The duplicate is scratched off. The cow is relieved of her celebrity. You return to your work. You draw your final cow for the day, spacing neat horns, accurate legs accounted for. You even remember to add the ceremonial dot that means count confirmed by eye. You sit back, wrists sore, eyes blurry, tablet heavy in your hand. You survived, Gula says, gathering his things. That earns you a drink tonight. Or a nap. Or both. You smile. Only if I don't dream in cuneiform. Too late, he calls as he walks off. It's already in your bones. You rise the next morning with a fresh stylus, a sore neck, and an unreasonable sense of optimism. Maybe today will be smoother. Maybe you won't get stared down by a cow that seems to question your legitimacy as a person. Maybe the tablets won't crack like stale bread the moment you breathe near them. Then you meet her. She stands alone at the edge of the pen legs, like tree trunks, eyes like thunderclouds, and a hide so glossy it could reflect your worst decisions back at you. She is enormous. She is majestic. She is the cow that absolutely, unequivocally refuses to be counted. The herder sees you approaching and slowly backs away, muttering good luck. You glance at him confused. Then you take one step closer and the beast bolts. She doesn't run far, just enough to ruin your line of sight. Then she trots in a taunting circle, slow and deliberate, like she knows you're on a deadline and she's the final boss. You try to follow, tablet in hand, stylus clenched like a weapon, but she weaves between other animals like a bovine labyrinth. Mainstream historical fact: ancient Babylonian records reveal that individual animals were sometimes given special notation if they were difficult to manage, had unusual traits, or were involved in incidents. This was often done through added symbols or side notes, early versions of livestock red flags. You try coaxing, you try whistling. You even try flattery, calling her the most symmetrical cow in the region. Nothing works. She kicks over a water bucket and stomps away, clearly offended by your attempt at charm. You scribble a temporary mark and outline with no identifying symbols, just so you don't forget. Gula, walking by, raises an eyebrow. She again. You nod. We call her Kish's regret, he says. She's been dodging tallies since spring. How do you not count a cow for 4 months? She hides behind others. Has a sixth sense for math. Quirky tidbit. There's a preserved clay tablet that includes a note crudely added near the margin that translates loosely to, "This cow refuses to stand still," possibly cursed. Avoid when tired. Some believe it's a joke, others suspect it was a sincere warning. Kish's regret ducks behind 2 calves. You catch a glimpse of her left flank. Is that a branding mark? You squint. It looks like a star over a crescent temple ownership. That complicates things. You need to log her, but also flag her as a sacred animal, and you still haven't gotten close enough to count her legs. You reposition, hoping to catch her between beams of the fence. She turns. You freeze. It's a standoff. She blinks slowly, then flops down with her back to you. You want to scream. Open scholarly debate. Some historians argue that not all cattle were meant to be individually counted. In large herds, scribes may have relied on block tallies, counting groups by the dozen or score. Others insist that even in mass audits, each animal had to be recorded with distinct physical notes, a debate fueled by inconsistently detailed tablets across sites. You take a breath stand on a feed trough for height and finally get a full view. 2 horns chipped on one side, 1 eye cloudy, 4 legs, one of which looks like it's stepped in something foul and permanent. You scratch furiously onto the tablet, hands shaking with focus. Kish's regret sighs and shifts. She looks directly at you. There is so much judgment in her eyes. The symbol for temple livestock goes on the far right column. The glyph for problematic behavior is one you just learned yesterday. 3 overlapping wedges that sort of resemble someone tearing up a contract. You mark it proudly. Then a hoof clunks against your shin. You topple backward off the trough into a pile of hay and indignity. Gula bursts out laughing from a nearby fence post. She got you, huh? She waited to do it. She's strategic. She's practically a scribe herself. You brush off the hay and check your tablet. Still intact, barely. Another scribe approaches, arms full of new clay slabs. You're not done with the North Pen, are you? You shake your head, still wrestling with it. Literally, he sets the slabs down. Well, when you do finish, they want a separate tally for calves. Temple wants to track breeding patterns this season. You groan. So, more columns, more headaches, more angry cows. You look back at Kish's regret. She's now sleeping in the shade, looking utterly innocent. Don't believe it for a second. You carefully walk to the edge of the pen, add a footnote symbol, and mark this tablet's edge with a vertical line. North Pen incomplete, awaiting confirmation. It's not perfect, but it's honest. And tomorrow you'll face her again. The morning sun hasn't even broken the haze yet, and already you're kneeling in front of a particularly moody ox, trying to figure out whether the odd lump on its back qualifies as distinctive marking or just bad posture. It shifts its weight and lets out a snort so explosive you feel it in your chest. You sigh. Another day, another unpredictable round of livestock hieroglyphics. Today, though, there's a new twist. A senior priest has issued an updated directive via a temple runner with too much eyeliner and not enough patience. All scribes are to begin recording fine traits of the herd, not just species, but subtler qualities. The document lists suggestions: horn symmetry, gait elegance, tail curl, temperament, spiritual resonance, whatever that means. And yes, hiccups. Mainstream historical fact. Babylonian record-keeping eventually evolved to include highly detailed descriptions of livestock. These were especially important for animals intended for religious purposes, temple donations, or noble consumption. Some tablets from Uruk and Nippur include as many as 12 identifying marks per cow. You rub your temples, you're not even sure how to log hiccups. Is there a glyph for that? A tiny, squiggly breath bubble? You glance at the ox again. It's chewing slowly, looking like it's never hiccuped in its life. But suddenly, as if summoned by sarcasm, the beast lets out a hiccup so dramatic it startles two nearby goats into a bleating sprint. Well, there it is, you mutter. You attempt to record this. The best you can do is a wavy line beside the standard horn and hide symbols. You label it suspected breath irregularity. It'll have to do. Just then a fellow scribe, an older woman with sharp cheekbones and a bad knee, leans over your shoulder. That symbol. That means pregnant and hostile. If you draw it that way, you freeze. Oh, she squints at your tablet. You just told the temple that Ox is an expectant mother with anger issues. I might need a new tablet. You definitely need better squiggles. Quirky tidbit. Some scribes had personal variations of symbols so idiosyncratic that later generations of archivists thought they were coded messages. One infamous clay ledger lists a cow with markings that modern translators believe mean wobbly legs, kind eyes, smells like almonds. From the next pen over, a younger scribe asks, "Hey, how do you draw unusual tail?" The older woman sighs. Long, crooked, split, infested, wavy. She closes her eyes in agony. Just use the barley sickle curve and pray nobody checks. You return to your own ox. It's now licking its own nose with the intensity of a monk reciting a mantra. You're tempted to log tongue awareness high, but think better of it. Instead, you try sketching a tail curl. Open scholarly debate. Some historians believe these fine traits had religious connotations, that a perfectly symmetrical horn or particularly gentle behavior was seen as a sign of divine favor. Others argue it was purely bureaucratic padding used to justify temple herds' special status and inflated numbers. The scribe beside you nudges you. You're bending your column too far left. Temple audits expect center alignment. I'm running out of space, then stack the symbols, but make sure the sacred ones go above the mundane. It's theological. You try. The result looks like a cartoon cow having a spiritual awakening while also suffering from scoliosis. You stare at it for a long moment. Then you draw a small dot in the corner, the unofficial sign for "I give up, but mean well." Around you the yard bustles, cows moo, styluses scrape, a goat headbutts a hay barrel and wins. And all the while tablets are filled with increasingly specific notes. Walks with a lean moose at shadow's flatulence exceeds expectations. The scribe with the bad knee finishes her own work and groans as she stands. Why are we logging personalities now? What's next? Cow star signs. You glance at your own tablet. You've just invented a new symbol for notably quiet under duress. You don't even know what that means. But somehow, it feels right. Then from across the yard, Gula shouts, "Hey, someone logged a tail twice. Either it's got two butts or someone's drunk." You look at your neighbor. "That wasn't me." She mutters, "I wish I were drunk." You lean back, let the tablet rest against your knee and close your eyes for a second. The cows keep breathing. The scribes keep scribbling, and somewhere inside a sun-baked archive chamber, some poor future scholar will one day read your hiccup glyph and wonder what on earth we were doing here. By midday, the sun has baked the earth into a cracked mosaic. Your sandals make small crunching sounds with each step, and your tunic clings to you like a passive-aggressive second skin. Somewhere a hawker is selling watered beer with exactly zero urgency, while a group of calves attempts to escape a loose pen, creating what historians might one day call a moderately annoying disturbance. And you're face to face with your greatest challenge yet, the Babylonian base 60 counting system. Today's assignment isn't just about describing cows anymore. Now you're tallying herd numbers for temple auditors using a number system that seems designed by someone who hated base 10 enthusiasts. Your clay tablet is fresh, your stylus is sharp, and your confidence is already cracked like a dropped oil jar. Mainstream historical fact. The Babylonians used a sexagesimal base 60 number system, which allowed for efficient calculations, particularly in astronomy and administration. Livestock records used combinations of wedge-shaped marks to indicate values, with positional notation playing a key role in distinguishing one cow from 60 cows, or 1/60th of a cow's value. You press the stylus into the clay with care, carving the familiar vertical wedge for 1. Easy enough. But then you need to record 62 cows. That's one full 60 and 2 extras, which means 1 wedge in the 60s column and 2 in the units. Right? You stare at your marks, unsure whether you just logged 62 cows or accidentally promised to deliver 2 heifers and a human soul. Don't forget to add a separator, says a voice behind you. It's Gula munching on something that looks like a pickled fig. Without a gap or that tiny diagonal mark, you've just pledged 62 cows to the temple treasury instead of to the grain auditor. That's bad, depends how angry the grain auditor is. Quirky tidbit. Some Babylonian scribes used special nicknames for numbers that frequently caused trouble. Hungry 60 was a common term for misaligned base markers, so called because it often ate the value of the unit after it. One clay fragment reads, "Woe to the scribe who forgets the gap. His flocks shall multiply on paper and nowhere else." You pause and gently scratch a diagonal separator between columns. Gula peers over your shoulder. Better. Still ugly, but better. Thank you for that backhanded support. Anytime. Open scholarly debate. Scholars still wrestle with whether all scribes used a standardized positional notation or if there was significant variation across city-states. While some tablets show clear uniform systems, others display ambiguity, especially in mixed tallies that involve both livestock and associated goods like milk dung or hides. Nearby, a younger scribe groans and snaps his stylus. "I just logged 600 instead of 60. They're going to think this farmer owns an empire. That's not a mistake someone calls. That's a career move." The others laugh tiredly. Humor, apparently, is the last line of defense against number-induced madness. You move to the next pen. This one has 35 cows, easy to count, but tedious to log. You try to carve a neat wedge cluster for 35, 130, and a 5, but halfway through you sneeze and gouge a deep scar through the entire line. Gula watches from a distance, and that, he says, is now a potato tribute. You close your eyes and mutter, "Let this cow be remembered forever as starch." You flip the tablet over and start again, slowly, precisely. First the 30, then a gap, then the 5, then the sacred seal symbol, since this batch is marked for religious use. Finally you add a tiny dot in the corner, your unofficial signature, a whisper in clay. "This was me. I tried." A runner from the temple approaches with a list. "You scribe. These cows here are dual-classed, tax and temple. Log them separately and double the tally." What same cows? 2 purposes, 2 lines. That makes no sense. Welcome to Babylon. You sigh and begin again. Now you're counting 68 cows, once for temple duty and again for tax record. That's 2 tallies, same cows, different columns, and a chance to royally mess up. The real trick isn't the counting, it's the recounting. One mistake in base 60 means the difference between a modest village herd and the king's personal livestock reserves. You look at your neighbor's tablet. Neat, precise, mocking. You try to copy the structure, wide left margin, clearly spaced numeric columns, sacred indicators stacked above common ones. It looks like math poetry. Yours, meanwhile, looks like a muddy dream someone forgot to finish. Gula passes again, still chewing. Remember, never round in livestock counts. The priesthood may forgive lies. The cows won't. As the sun dips low and casts long shadows over the pens, you look at your last tally, 1 cow shy of an even 180. You double-check the pen. Yup, 1 missing. Then from behind a haystack, a lone cow pokes its head out, eyes wide, tail swishing guiltily. It had been napping the whole time. You sigh, etch in your final 1, and close the count. You survive the math. Barely. By now you've made peace with 2 truths. Clay never stays soft when you need it to, and everyone wants something from the scribe, especially when what they want is a slightly adjusted number. You're halfway through recording a medium-sized herd, 40 cows, mostly dull-eyed and cooperative, when a herder with impressively oiled hair sidles up next to you. He leans in with the stealth of a man who's never done anything legally above board. "Hey, scribe," he says, with a smile that should be wearing sandals of its own. "Let's say maybe I got 36 cows, but maybe, just maybe, you see 31, yeah." You pause mid-symbol. The number wedge is still wet. 1 wrong poke and it's mud soup. "Why would I see 31, you ask?" He shrugs and dangles a small pouch. It jingles. "Barley, the currency of every stomach." "You like porridge, don't you?" he says. "Sweet porridge with a splash of date syrup." Mainstream historical fact. Barley was not just food, it was a form of currency in ancient Mesopotamia. Scribes were sometimes offered grain in exchange for more favorable tallies. Officially, this was corruption. Unofficially, it was Tuesday. You consider the offer. 36 cows isn't outrageous. Shaving 5 off the record wouldn't topple the temple's books. But then again, you do remember the scribe who fudged an ox tally last season. They made him recopy all 50 tablets by torchlight, without breaks, in winter. The herder senses hesitation and sweetens the deal. "I got millet cakes too, still warm, quirky tidbit." There exists a preserved complaint tablet addressed to a temple official where one herder writes, "The scribe accepted my barley but still wrote goat. I demand my tribute returned or his sandals surrendered." You glance up and down the row of cows. 36 clearly, even spacing well-groomed. He's not trying to claim a herd that isn't his, just asking for a discount in ink. You sigh and press your stylus into the clay. 36, you say firmly. No edits. He frowns. "You sure I like porridge," you say, "but I also like not being cursed by temple accountants." He shrugs, pockets his pouch and strolls off, disappointed but not surprised. Moments later, Gula strolls by, sipping something fermented out of a reed straw. "Did he try the barley bribe?" he asks casually. "Like clockwork." You take it. You hold up your stylus, integrity and poor nutrition all the way. Gula raises his straw in mock salute. "You'll make it to mediocrity yet." Open scholarly debate. It remains unclear how widespread or tolerated bribery was among scribes. While legal codes condemned it, the number of sarcastic scribal notes, suspicious duplications, and passive-aggressive corrections on surviving tablets suggest that creative interpretation was part of the job. Back at your tablet, you make a small note in the corner, not an accusation, not a confession, just a wedge slightly askew. A future scribe will know something almost happened here. As you finish the tally, you're approached by another herder. This one has a wide hat, a calm demeanor, and exactly the opposite request. "Hey, scribe," he says, voice low. "I got 52 cows, but make it 60, just on paper." You stare. "Why?" He grins. "Bigger count, bigger status. Better marriage offers." They see the number, they see a man of means. Even if the cows don't exist, they might, someday. You sigh. "That's not how numbers work." He shrugs. "They're just symbols in mud. Who decides what's real?" You blink. That's either dangerously philosophical or the beginning of a bad legal precedent. You refuse him too. Still, as he walks away, you wonder how many tallies on these tablets are aspirations instead of realities, hopes recorded like facts. Later that afternoon, as you carry your tablet toward the shade for drying a temple, apprentice approaches. Young, serious, very clean fingernails. He takes your clay with reverence, glancing at the tally, flipping it, reading your marks. "This is correct," he asks. You nod. "To the best of my eye and count." He nods again. "Then let it be so. The grain taxes will follow from this, and there it is, the weight of what you've done. What began as mud and mooing becomes a binding line in the books. A single wedge mark here or there changes how much barley a family owes, or what a farmer gets to keep for winter, or whether someone eats. You feel the sun on your neck. You feel the sweat between your shoulder blades. You feel the pressure of power you didn't ask for, but now hold in your fingers. You are a scribe, a bureaucrat, a storyteller in symbols, and no matter how many cows bleat or bribes jingle, you will write the truth or something very close to it. Just when you think the chaos is tapering off and your clay tablets are starting to stack neatly, like well-behaved slices of history, a new figure enters the yard, robed in crimson, bald as a melon, and scowling like he was born mid-complaint. The herders go silent. The scribes shift uncomfortably. Even the cows seem to tense up, tails flicking with a little more anxiety than usual. He is the tax assessor. The man walks like the dirt is too common for his feet, and the air owes him something. He carries nothing, no stylus, no ledger, not even a tally rope, but you can feel the weight of his gaze. He is not here to write. He is here to read. You instinctively hug your most recent tablet closer, like it's a newborn. Mainstream historical fact. Babylonian tax assessors often reviewed records submitted by scribes to determine the correct amount of goods, grain, livestock, oil that individuals or communities owed. They had authority to question, override, or even nullify tallies, especially those suspected of inaccuracy or fraud. He stops in front of your table, eyes your clay. Then he says the 3 worst words a scribe can hear. Read it aloud. You glance down. This tablet. Oh no, this is the one you did right after someone knocked over a trough and you slipped in cow slime. You were trying to hold the clay level while sneezing and apologizing to a furious calf. The symbols are not your best. You clear your throat. 82 cows, 40 temple-bound, 30 for domestic use, 12 notched for breeding no blemish, tallied by horn type, and he raises a hand. You stop. He leans in. This one, he says, tapping a mark near the top. This is the tithing glyph. Why is it on a domestic cow? You squint. It is the tithing glyph. You must have meant dappled coloring, which uses 2 wedges in a slightly different orientation. It was an error, you admit, throat dry. My stylus slipped. He stares. Then, after what feels like the lifespan of a Mesopotamian goat, he grunts. Fix it. Relieved, you grab your knife and scrape the top layer of clay gently. Too hard, and you'll ruin the line spacing. Too soft, and you'll erase half the row. It's like surgery, but with more manure. He watches without blinking. Somewhere behind him, Gula whispers, "Careful." He once made a novice redo an entire sheep census for putting a hoof where a horn should be. Quirky tidbit clay tablets were often reused by smoothing the surface with a flat edge or wet cloth before the clay hardened. Some tablets even show layers of erasure and re-etching, suggesting that not even divine administrators were immune to second drafts. You correct the mark. Re-etch dappled. Add a dot to clarify. The taxman nods once. Acceptable, he says. You exhale. The cows resume mooing as if released from tension. Open scholarly debate. Some researchers argue that tax assessors doubled as ritual inspectors, assessing not just numbers but the moral and spiritual weight of each record. Others believe their stern demeanor was simply bureaucratic theater meant to scare accuracy into tired scribes. The assessor moves on. Other scribes are not so lucky. You overhear a junior getting grilled about mixed tally columns. Another is told that her spacing invites demonic misinterpretation. One is sent to fetch a backup tablet because this one insults mathematics. By the time he's finished, the sun is lower and the morale even lower, but the records are tighter, cleaner. Cow counting has become a martial art. You sit in the shade with Gula, who sips something questionable from a ceramic cup. I don't get it, you say. He didn't write a thing, didn't count a single cow, and yet everyone panics like he's Marduk in sandals. Gula shrugs. He doesn't have to count. He remembers. Last season I marked 33 sheep for a farmer in Sipar. The assessor asked me 6 weeks later why my 3 wedge was tilted left. What did you say? I told him the sheep leaned that way. He didn't laugh. You both chuckle anyway. You reach into your satchel and pull out your tally from earlier. You smooth the surface where a nervous tick made your wedge a little thick. Not wrong, just imprecise. Because in this world, precision is currency, and currency means power. Even when you're holding a block of wet dirt with tiny triangles poked into it, the tax assessor leaves at sunset robes, catching the breeze like a disappointed ghost. And the scribes, they get back to work, quietly, carefully, as if the clay has ears, because maybe it does. As the stars begin to emerge and the scent of wet hay deepens into something bordering on theological, you're reassigned to a new task recording livestock offerings gifted to the local temple. This sounds simple. You're wrong. The priest in charge of the transfer wears robes so heavy with embroidery they practically jingle when he walks. He greets you with the smile of someone who's about to make your life much harder. These cows, he begins gesturing vaguely to a half-empty pen, are divine tributes from the house of Ishbi-Era. Their numbers are not to be questioned. You glance into the pen. 4 cows, maybe 5 if that shadow is alive. How many did they say they gave you? Ask stylus, hovering. 12. You blink. 12. The priest nods solemnly. 12 cows offered with sincerity and incense. You resist the urge to write offered with boldness and a calculator malfunction. Mainstream historical fact. It was common for elite households and local leaders to gift livestock to temples as a public show of piety. These gifts were recorded with elaborate notes and often exaggerated. Temples could contest the count, but doing so offended powerful donors. So, creative accounting occurred. You hesitate. Should you write 12? Should you write 5? Should you invent a new symbol that means cow theoretical? The priest sees your expression. Do you doubt the generosity of Ishbi-Era? Quirky tidbit. 1 clay record from the city of Larsa lists 4 bulls, 2 cows, and 6 cows, not presently visible but known to the gods. The phrase became an inside joke among scribes' shorthand for any gift that was more promise than reality. You scribble slowly, cow count 12, then below it a tiny secondary mark. you've seen used before, a loop with a dot inside, which unofficially means auditor discretion advised. The priest beams. May Marduk bless your pen. You resist, saying Marduk's gonna have questions. You move on to the next pen. 2 cows, 1 calf, all visibly breathing. Good. You tally the calf separately, mark it with the symbol for under 1 year, and begin a fresh line on your tablet. Then from behind a pile of woven baskets a herder appears, and gestures you over conspiratorially. Listen, he whispers. The black and white one, that's not part of the tribute. That's my cousin's cow. She wandered in. She's in the pen. She's not on the list. She's standing next to the incense offering platter. She has no faith, he says gravely. You can see it in her eyes. Open scholarly debate. There is ongoing discussion among historians about how temples managed livestock inflow and whether some animals were mistakenly or deliberately absorbed into sacrificial herds. While records show attempts at accuracy, numerous cases imply administrative chaos. You sigh, mark the cow with a question symbol, technically for pending identity verification, and step back. It's not your job to interrogate a spiritually ambiguous heifer. Next, you're shown a scrawny ox that's clearly seen better days. The priest places a wreath around its neck and announces, "This is our golden bull, given in honor of Nana, god of the moon." You stare. The ox coughs. It might also be blinking Morse code for help. You say you're calling that a golden bull. It represents spiritual gold. Does it represent ribs, too? The priest frowns. You log it as bull symbolic status pending. As dusk settles fully, the yard glows with torchlight, and low chanting begins from a nearby shrine. You can't see the stars now, but you can hear the gentle crackle of flames, the shuffling of cows, and the grumbling of scribes trying to do math in the dark. Gula passes, nodding toward the offering pen. They say next week it'll be sheep. Hundreds of them. You shudder. Do sheep even stay still long enough to count only when they're asleep? Or plotting? He glances at your tablet. 12 temple cows only if you squint, and believe in miracles. He grins. Sounds about right. You finish the last line, mark the edge with the sacred tri-line closure, and press your personal wedge into the lower corner. Your symbol, your truth, or the version of it the gods will accept. The priest collects your tablet and murmurs a blessing that sounds suspiciously like an audit waiver. You're left in the dark with your stylus, your doubts, and one cow still watching you like it knows something you don't. It probably does. You're summoned at dawn by a temple bureaucrat who looks like he hasn't slept since the last lunar eclipse. His robe is stained with something that might be incense ash or cow saliva, and he smells like a confusing blend of milk scroll glue and righteous exhaustion. We need to fix your ledger, he says, skipping both greeting and preamble. You blink. Which one? The temple tribute count. There are discrepancies. Of course there are. He leads you into a cramped chamber at the edge of the livestock yard where the only light comes from a slit in the clay wall and a flickering oil lamp shaped like a lion. Inside, 3 other scribes sit on low stools surrounded by tablets. Piles of them, some cracked, some moist, some still bearing the faint fingerprints of cows. One scribe waves you over. Yours is here, she says, tapping a slab. Your 12-cow tribute. You recognize the wedge spacing immediately. Your signature's right there in the corner, like a soft whisper saying, please don't let this turn into a tribunal. Mainstream historical fact. Temple bureaucrats in Babylon were responsible for verifying sacrificial inventories and tribute donations. This process could involve multiple scribes reviewing the same record from different angles, sometimes leading to heated disagreements about what a single wedge or dot truly meant. The first bureaucrat leans in and says, this wedge. Are you sure it means 12? You squint. It's clearly 12 1/60th place wedge and 2 in the units. Yes, you say, unless the cow scratched it after I left. He doesn't smile. Well, the house of Ishbiera is insisting it was 14. You almost laugh. 14. There weren't even 14 legs in that pen, let alone cows. Another scribe chimes in. We triple-checked the pen. It holds 5 cows, 1 calf, 1 extremely confused goat. Possibly sacred goat, adds the first scribe. Quirky tidbit. Certain tablets in Nippur describe disputes between temples and donors over the spiritual weight of livestock. One animal was described as worth 2 cows in holiness, which historians believe was either mystical hyperbole or an early tax loophole. So the priest bureaucrat says the house wants credit for more than what's physically present. They say the rest are symbolic gifts, offered in spirit. You rub your temples. What does that even mean? That they dreamed about giving more cows? He shrugs. It's theology. I just notarize it. Open scholarly debate. There's continued uncertainty around how ancient scribes handled metaphysical claims in accounting. Some believe that symbolic gifts, often marked with unique modifiers, had spiritual standing but were excluded from material inventories. Others argue they were quietly tolerated to preserve political alliances. The scribe across from you suggests a compromise. We can create a dual notation. 12 cows received, 2 cows pledged via divine intent. You stare. That's a thing. It is now, she says, and begins etching the term intended livestock into a new tablet with calm precision. You assist. You write a fresh entry. Received 12, projected 2. Status spiritually pending. You're not sure if you're making history or enabling creative theology. Later that day, another temple official stops you near the offering pens. Are you the one who wrote the hiccup cow tally? You blink. Yes, we've had interpretations. Like what? Someone said it signifies breath offering. Another said the cow was touched by the wind god. It had gas. He nods. Mysteries of the flesh, mysteries of the divine. We'll assign it extra incense just to be safe. You walk away slowly. That evening, you're back near the main archive chamber, delivering the corrected tribute tablet. As you approach the gate, you pass a man counting birds into a basket while chanting their names in Sumerian. You don't ask. You don't want to know. Inside, the chamber is cool and echoing. Hundreds of tablets sit on recessed shelves, each representing a single moment of agreement, dispute, or divine fudge factor. You hand over your tablet to the archivist, a woman with 2 styluses stuck behind one ear, like horns. She flips it over, squints, grunts. Spiritual intent notation. That's new. Experimental theology, you say, backed by a goat. She places it on the shelf. Good luck explaining that in 20 years. You exit into the twilight, stylus tucked into your sash. Somewhere a cow moos quietly as if amused. You moan to yourself, 12 real cows, 2 imaginary cows, 1 blessed goat, and somehow all of it counts. You don't even make it to breakfast the next day before chaos finds you again. A storm rolled through in the early morning. Nothing biblical, just enough to soak the ground, knock over a feed basket, and turn the entire cow yard into a slippery, steaming soup of wet earth and hoofprints. You arrive with damp sandals, a slightly bent stylus, and the unmistakable look of someone who did not expect to be doing an emergency recount. The foreman meets you with a scowl and a frond umbrella. Half the tablets didn't make it, he says bluntly. Water got into the ledger tent. You feel that familiar weight in your gut. Which one's yours, he says, as if the gods themselves are assigning blame. The temple tributes. And the sacred hiccup cow, mainstream historical fact. Despite their durability, clay tablets were vulnerable when still soft. Rain, mud, livestock mishaps, any of these could ruin a day's work. Some cities developed storage techniques using reed baskets or early tarpaulin to shield documents. Others just hoped for dry weather. You're given a replacement tablet slightly warped and pointed toward the pens where the same cows now stand in soggy disarray. Some have moved, others have somehow become more muddy, and at least two seem larger than you remember, or angrier. You begin again. It's like solving a jigsaw puzzle where half the pieces are alive and none of them like you. Hey, Gula calls from across the slop. Remember when you wrote down that calf as unusually peaceful? You nod. Well, it just kicked a scribe into a trough. You sigh, adjust your grip, and mark the new calf entry with the symbol for temperament has evolved. Quirky tidbit. A surviving tablet from Sipar includes a small correction line where a calf originally noted as mild is later updated to deceptively mild tendency to trample. The revision is accompanied by a smudge that might be blood or extremely unfortunate ink. You move down the pen trying to remember which cows were tagged for temple use. You recall one with an asymmetrical patch over its eye, but now 3 of them look like that. Either the mud has created optical illusions, or you're slowly losing your grip on bovine identity. Open, scholarly debate. Historians disagree over how precise these early inventories actually were. Some argue scribes were held to high standards of individual identification, while others believe broader categories, e.g., 10 brown cows, generally agreeable, were more common in practice. You pause in front of one cow. You think it's the spiritual offering from House Ishbi era, but now she's covered in swamp goo and chewing on a reed mat like it owes her money. You flag her anyway, just to be safe. As you work more, scribes begin arriving. Some are here to redo their own tallies. Others are panicking about disputed ownership because now, with animals having shuffled around, there's confusion over which herds belong to which donors. It gets worse when 2 herders start shouting, "That one's mine." "No, she's part of my tribute. I tied a reed to her horn. She ate your reed." Soon you're caught in the middle of what might be the first known livestock custody battle. The cow in question watches the argument with the bored indifference of someone who knows no one's getting her to move until she's good and ready. You try diplomacy. "Did either of you brand her?" They both shake their heads. "Any other markings?" She twitches her tail a lot. You sigh, make a neutral symbol for ownership, undetermined, and walk away slowly, carefully, before someone suggests coin flipping with oxen. By mid-morning the rain starts again, light, annoying, just enough to threaten your new tablet. You huddle under a makeshift canopy of palm leaves with 2 other scribes, all of you crouched like scholars in exile. Gula ducks in and offers you a dry cloth. "How's your recount? I'm halfway through writing a cow's personality profile based on twitch frequency and ear angle." "Excellent. Sounds peer-reviewed." You all laugh, tired and soaked. The tablet beneath your hand is still damp, but holding. You scratch in a few final glyphs, count verified, subject to weather and bovine cooperation. At the end of the day, the high priest comes to inspect the work. His sandals don't touch mud. Someone's literally laying rush mats before him as he walks. He glances at your tablet, frowns. Why does this line say cow uncooperative due to philosophical reasons? You blink. She wouldn't stop staring into the middle distance. I assumed she was pondering the void. He nods, surprisingly. Fair. He signs off. You sit back, stylus balanced on your knee, and look out at the herd. Now mostly quiet, damp, and contemplative. You've done it again, remade a record from memory, mud, and prayer. And you know deep in your aching bones that someone's going to lose this new tablet before the week is out. It's late afternoon when you hear something that should never echo through a livestock yard. Someone copied my tally. The voice belongs to a young scribe, barely more than a boy, stylus still shiny, tablet still unchipped. He's waving his clay slab like a courtroom exhibit, fury in his eyes, and damp cow spit on his sleeve. This is my count. He took it, copied it symbol for symbol. You sigh, already tired of what's about to unfold. A small crowd gathers. A second scribe, older beard that's been ink-stained for so long, it's practically dyed, crosses his arms. I copied nothing, he says flatly. The younger one holds his tablet aloft. Then why does yours have the same spacing, the same errors? You even copied my upside-down fertility wedge. You wince. That symbol, when inverted, reportedly means divine constipation, not something you want associated with temple records. Mainstream historical fact. While plagiarism as a concept wasn't formally condemned in Babylonian legal codes, scribal training emphasized personal accuracy and record-keeping ethics. Apprentices who copied carelessly could be reprimanded or even reassigned to non-writing labor. The head archivist appears, robes, fluttering eyes, sharp. "What's this about duplicate tallies, forgery?" says the young one. "Straight from my wax draft." The archivist snatches both tablets and squints. Identical, even the hoof count correction note. Quirky tidbit. At least one clay tablet from the city of Mari has a scratched-in message on the back that reads, "Don't steal this Count Elum, I'll know." Some scholars believe scribes developed signature wedge spacing, similar to handwriting, to prevent exactly this. You step forward gently. I can verify. I saw him drafting the original this morning near the East Pens. He was muttering about horn symmetry ratios, very passionately. The older scribe glares at you. "I just wanted to save time." The archivist frowns. "By copying errors, it was an artistic choice," he grumbles. Open scholarly debate. Some academics argue that scribes occasionally reuse templates, especially for standard herds, adjusting only key figures. Others believe any duplication was seen as both lazy and risky, especially when livestock ownership or temple tribute depended on precise individualized markings. Punishment in this case is gentle but firm. The older scribe is assigned an afternoon of inventory clarification, essentially cow watching with no stylus, just his eyes and a mental tally. "May he never forget another tale," the archivist mutters, returning the original tablet to its youthful author. Later, during a lull in the day's chaos, you join Gula and the other scribes under a dusty awning made from old grain sacks. There's sweet beer, barely alcoholic, mostly just a reason to sit together, and a plate of soft bread with something suspiciously pickled on top. You raise your cup to original work. Gula smirks, and to not being caught when it isn't. The others laugh. Someone starts humming an old work song, the one about a goat that couldn't be counted because it kept changing owners mid-audit. Then someone says it, "What if someone copies your tally?" You glance down at the tablet resting near your knee. Your own spacing, your own shorthand, your little quirks and dots and flourishes, your invisible stamp of authorship. "I'd be flattered," you say, then furious, then deeply suspicious, then back to flattered. Gula adds. You nod. It's a cycle. Still, the idea lingers with you all evening. You start incorporating tiny variations, minuscule curls on your spacing symbols that only you would know aren't quite standard. A slight tilt on the wedge for left horn, a bottom-weighted dot on calf under a year. Tiny tweaks that would catch a copyist but go unnoticed by any audit priest or taxman. You've created a fingerprint in clay, a defense, a claim. And as the light fades and the pen quiets, you realize something oddly comforting. Your handwriting is now part of this world. These cows, these tallies, these scribbles, they're yours. They exist because you said they did. A cow moves behind you. You turn. It's the hiccup cow, watching you. Again, you smile and whisper, "Don't worry. You're safe from plagiarism. Nobody else would dare record you." She sneezes into a pile of hay. your mark in the world preserved by stylus memory and mucus. The next morning brings with it the smell of incense, burnt barley, and what can only be described as ceremonial optimism. Today, you're told, is a day of sacred accounting, when all livestock tied to temple ritual must be reviewed for spiritual appropriateness. You stare at the announcement posted in cuneiform, of course, on a slab outside the pen gate. It reads like it was written by someone both deeply devout and very suspicious of cows. Then your eyes land on the phrase that makes your stomach clench: sacred bulls to be reassessed for legitimacy. Oh no, not this again, because once a cow or bull has been declared sacred, it's supposed to be off limits, exempt from tax, protected from slaughter, and treated as divine property. But there's always that one farmer or herder who gets a little too enthusiastic with spiritual designation to save on taxes. Mainstream historical fact: declaring animals sacred was often used as a tax loophole. In theory, the designation came from priests, through ritual signs, unusual markings, auspicious behavior, omens. In practice, it was sometimes just a particularly fat cow and a hopeful story. You're approached by a tall, twitchy herder who tugs you toward a low pen. There he whispers, "That bull, sacred, swam across the canal during a lightning storm, didn't flinch. That's got to mean something." You peer over the fence. The bull in question is chewing cud and very clearly missing one horn. It's compelling, you say diplomatically. He's seen visions, the herder insists. Gula walks by, eyeing the scene. "If missing a horn makes you holy, I've got a goat with a limp who's basically a prophet." The herder glares. This is serious. The storm was biblical. You examine the bull again. It's branded with a faded temple mark, uncertain origin, and has a lump on one leg the size of an extra hoof. You mark it down anyway. Bull sacred claim under review. Exhibits calm in weather. Possibly prophetic limp. Quirky tidbit: a fragment from the city of Borsippa documents a sacred cow whose divine status was later revoked when it was caught eating scrolls. The priest who downgraded her claimed she had betrayed the word with her teeth. The ritual review continues. One priest chants while poking at a bull's ear with a ceremonial reed. Another lays his forehead against a cow's flank and waits for vibrations. A third simply sniffs the animal and declares, "She smells of devotion." You record it all. Then comes the situation. A middle-aged farmer, slick with nervous sweat, presents a cow he insists is sacred. Pure white eyes like polished clay and a tongue that never stops moving. But the cow doesn't exist. You stand before an empty pen. The farmer gestures dramatically at the space between two tethering posts. "She was here," he cries. "She appeared in a dream. The gods showed her to me. She's invisible," you say flatly. "No hidden in the folds of the world." You write cow invisible, claimed seen in vision. Status non-material, awaiting metaphysical confirmation. The priest nods. The gods move in silence. You mutter, "So do tax evaders." Open scholarly debate. Some academics argue that invisible livestock records were allegorical, used to represent debts owed or tribute pledged but not yet delivered. Others believe they reflected genuine belief in divine visions or spiritual proxies. Later that afternoon, as the re-verification winds down, you're summoned to the temple courtyard. The high priest is seated beneath a canopy surrounded by clay tablets stacked like bricks. He waves you forward. "Your entries," he says, "show imagination." Thank you. The gods appreciate precision, but they respect interpretation. "Good to know," you say, unsure whether you're being honored or warned. He picks up your entry on the prophetic bull, reads it twice, snorts. "I've seen this bull. He chased a merchant into the canal last week." Spiritual assertiveness. The high priest smiles faintly. "Let's go with that. He stamps your tablet with the Trimark seal, official, accepted, validated by faith and paperwork. As you leave, Gula catches up with you. So they buy the sacred story. They blessed it, didn't question the limp. Classic. You both stroll past the pens. The cows are quiet now. The sacred ones, the ordinary ones, the invisible ones. They all blend into the slow breathing of the yard. You glance down at your stylus, still warm from use. It's a strange power to decide what's seen, what's sacred, what's real. And tomorrow, you might meet a pig that dreams of priesthood. It's nearly nightfall, and just when you think your part in the divine cow registry is over, a torchbearer arrives with a message that makes your stomach turn. The ledgers must be finished tonight. Bring your tablet. There will be torchlight revisions. You mutter something unsacred under your breath. Torchlight. The romantic lighting of poets' lovers and overworked accountants. The review chamber is already buzzing when you arrive. Scribes squatting in circles, clay tablets balanced on folded mats. Flickering torches jammed into reed sconces along the walls. The smell is a mix of burnt oil, warm ink, and lightly roasted barley cake someone's trying to pass off as dinner. Mainstream historical fact: Babylonian scribes often worked by torchlight, particularly when finishing urgent or ritual-sensitive ledgers. The glow of flame made fine symbol work difficult, which led to a spike in errors and, in some cases, elaborate artistic compensations to correct them. You find an empty spot on a woven mat and pull out your slab. Your stylus skips once over the hardened surface, and you know immediately this clay is barely soft enough for edits. You have to re-record the calf count from the southern pens, says the scribe next to you, an older man with missing teeth and a scar across his temple. Too many inconsistencies in birth symbols. You nod, slowly flipping your tablet to the correct section. The calf symbol's little curved lines, horns, notched birth markers etched like water droplets are sloppy. Your fault. You rushed this batch while dodging that one cow that kept sneezing in your face. Quirky tidbit. Some temple scribes left apologetic side notes on their tablets, including one infamous example that reads, "These numbers are correct to my knowledge." If not, blame the assistant who brought weak beer. The scribe next to you mutters, "Watch your flame shadow. You'll triple a wedge if you're not careful." You glance at your hand. Sure enough, the shadows flicker over your own writing like spectral glyphs. You reposition slightly, using a folded cloak to shield the light. You etch, slowly, gently. Calf born recently, tail notch left. Calf hesitant to walk, maybe goat. Wait, that one. That might have been a goat. You scratch it out and rewrite goat impersonating calf marked. No longer under temple custody. Open scholarly debate. Researchers continue to debate how temple scribes determined calf parentage and identity during mass audits. Some believe oral testimony played a major role, while others argue birth symbols and body marks were meticulously matched across mother-offspring records. Across the chamber, a frustrated junior scribe lets out a soft wail. "I forgot the decimal separator on the ox count again. The priests will think they donated 600. Then let them be generous," someone calls back. "The gods can sort it out." You suppress a laugh and keep scratching. You finish the calf corrections and begin formatting the herd totals for this cycle. This requires careful spacing: sacred cows to the left column, taxable cows to the right, and a middle section for disputed ownership. You debate whether to create a new category for cows that emotionally manipulated their owners. In the middle of it all, your stylus snaps. Not catastrophically, just the tip. But in torchlight, even a small split makes your wedge strokes uneven. You curse under your breath and begin shaping a replacement with the edge of your sandal. Gula strolls by, hands behind his back torch, glow dancing on his nose. You carving a new stylus or summoning demons? They might be the same thing, you reply. He nods solemnly. Let me know if they help with herd totals. Eventually the corrections are done. You blow gently across the tablet, inspecting the layout by the flame's edge. The calf count is clear now. The birthmarks make sense. Even the questionable goat has a satisfying loop around its entry. The high priest walks through the chamber like a ghost among scribes. He says nothing, just pauses by each one, nods, and moves on. When he reaches you, he stops. You corrected the limp bull tally, he says. Yes. And added the symbolic cow count. I triple-checked the math. He leans in, even the invisible one. She's on there, spiritually. He holds your gaze, then presses a thumb into the tablet's corner. Not an official seal, just acknowledgement. You feel weirdly proud. The night grows quieter. One by one, scribes finish and filter out. You gather your materials slowly. You're tired, but calm. There's something meditative about it, this silent fellowship of people trying to trap truth in triangles. Outside, the moon hangs heavy above the pens. The cows are sleeping or pretending to. One lifts her head, regards you, then flops back down with a grunt. You smile and walk into the dark tally, complete. The next morning, you're not tallying. You're delivering, and the destination is as intimidating as the number of blisters on your hands. You've been assigned to carry your finalized tablet to the archive. Not an archive. The archive, the vast, near-mythical chamber beneath the temple complex where records dating back generations are stored. It's said some of the shelves haven't been touched in decades, and that if you knock over a pile in the wrong corner, you might collapse a century of bureaucracy. You arrive at the outer gate with your tablet wrapped carefully in a reed case. An older scribe in a stiff robe glances at your permit and waves you through with a grunt that might have meant good luck or try not to die. Mainstream historical fact. Babylonian archives were massive labyrinthine spaces built to preserve state temple and economic records. Clay tablets were stored on man-labeled shelves, in baskets or sealed jars, often grouped by date or type of transaction. Some tablets even had file handles made of string or tags. You step inside and the air changes, immediately cool, dry, heavy with the scent of baked earth and distant ink. It's quiet in the way a library is quiet, not silent, but deeply intentional. Rows of clay shelves line the walls. Some are neat, others sagging under the weight of hundreds of tablets. Here and there, labels carved into tablets act as dividers: oxen taxed northern sector, or calves under divine custody. A thin scribe with hunched shoulders approaches. His robe is patched and his hands are stained a permanent shade of red from handling terracotta dust. He peers at your reed case like it might explode. Delivery final cow tally, you say, holding it out like a sacrificial offering. He unrolls it with reverence, eyes scanning the surface. Neat, he says, which in archival terms might be the highest compliment possible. Column balance is tight. Your goat loop is unconventional. You wince. She was unconventional. He nods, satisfied. Quirky tidbit. Some scribes developed signature flourishes for unusual entries, like loops around animal glyphs, microdots, or directional marks, to help archivists identify quirky or disputed cases. One tablet includes a cow record circled with 3 wedges and the phrase, "This one kicked my cousin. She knows what she did." You follow him into a far aisle, deeper and darker, where the torchlight barely touches the far shelves. You pass a room labeled Defunct Dynasties Livestock Disputes and another called Cows of Uncertain Parentage. Eventually, you stop at a shelf marked Temple Cattle Season of Storms, 13th Year of Amidatana. He places your tablet gently on the stone slab. You feel strange. Not sad, not proud, just still. You've spent days scribbling, editing, dodging cows and bribes and gods. And now, your work becomes part of a ledger older than anyone who remembers why the hiccup cow mattered. Open scholarly debate. Scholars disagree about how much of Babylon's archive was ever referenced again after storage. Some believe they were actively used for long-term audits and legal reference. Others argue many tablets were symbolic proof of order rather than practical tools. Want to see something? The archivist asks suddenly. You nod, curious. He pulls a tablet from a high shelf, brushes off a layer of dust, and places it in your hands. The symbols are elegant, deeply cut, familiar. It's from 70 years ago, he says. Same pen, same herd line, same sacred cow designation. You tilt the tablet, catch the light. It lists Kish's regret. You laugh. She was already avoiding tallies back then. She's a legend, he says, half serious. I think she's immortal. Or it's just a title passed from cow to cow like a priesthood. You hand it back carefully. There's something deeply comforting about the continuity. The idea that somewhere right now another scribe is chasing that same lineage across a muddy pen stylus clenched like a dagger. You exit the archive into daylight. It's hot. The cows are mooing again. One calf tries to chew your sash. Gula is leaning against a fence post, sipping something that might be wine or might be river water. You made the deposit, he asks. She's in the shelf now. Then you're officially part of the bureaucracy. Can't take it back. Your cow data's eternal. You squint into the sun. Eternal, you repeat, and somehow you don't mind at all. After the archive run, you expect a break, maybe a nap, maybe a quiet moment under a palm with a barley cake and no obligations to etch anything triangular. Instead, you're dragged gently but firmly into a nearby tavern by Gula and two other scribes. Post-deposit protocol, he says. Every tally must be balanced with beer. The place is dim, its roof patched with layered rushes. Clay mugs clink softly. A low song hums from a corner where a trio of scribes debate whether a goat count should include kids born during an audit. Mainstream historical fact. Babylonian taverns were often gathering places for scribes, workers, and priests alike. Beer, thick, cloudy, made from fermented barley, was both food and drink. There's evidence of scribal communities using taverns as informal support groups after difficult bureaucratic cycles. You sit at a wobbly table stylus tucked in your sash. The mug before you steams faintly. It smells like warm bread and regret. First-time finishers drink for free, one of the others says, clinking mugs. Provided your tablet survived the archivist's judgment. It did, you mutter, sipping. It's thick enough to chew. They laugh. You know, says a scribe with ink under every fingernail, I once logged a cow twice by accident and had to invent a twin sister to cover it. How'd that work out? Cow gave birth 2 weeks later. Twins? That's not accounting, Gula says. That's prophecy. You laugh, head fuzzy from barley and torchlight exhaustion. There's a comfort in the company. No cows to chase, no symbols to tweak. No high priests waiting to reclassify your oxen as metaphors. Until one scribe leans in, you hear about the tattoo scheme, you blink. What now? Rumor says some herders are secretly marking calves with hidden tattoos. Discreet under the tail, maybe behind the ear. To dodge recounts or skip temple levies, you lower your mug. Tattooed cows. Gula shrugs. Stranger things have happened. Remember the invisible cow? She was sacred, you say, mock defensive. Sure, he grins. And I'm married to a tax exemption. Quirky tidbit. While no direct evidence of cow tattoos has been preserved, some clay tablets reference private markings and non-clerical identifiers placed on livestock, suggesting that unofficial tracking methods were known and occasionally scolded by temple officials. Temple's suspicious, someone says. They're ordering spot checks next week. If they find marks that don't match the ledgers, he mimes a clay tablet being snapped. You lean back. I thought this was a job about numbers. Clay symbols mooing. Everything's a ledger, Gula says. Even lies. Open scholarly debate. Modern researchers continue to speculate on undocumented livestock tracking practices. Some believe families developed generational marks that were passed along orally or physically, regardless of what official scribes recorded. You sit in silence a moment, watching dust dance in a beam of late afternoon light. Then someone starts singing softly off-key, a song about a bull who refused to be sold and instead demanded better hay. The others join in clapping. You try not to smile. You've made it this far. Tablet stored, cow hiccups recorded, invisible sacred livestock now permanently etched into the bureaucratic stonework of Babylon. You raise your mug to lies in clay, to truths in disguise, Gula replies. To cows that escape both, another says solemn. You drink. It tastes awful, and exactly right. You awake the next morning with a headache made entirely of barley and regret. Your tongue feels like it's been scrawled on by a stylus. The tavern is long behind you, but your responsibilities tragically are not. You've barely rinsed your face when a temple assistant finds you. She's holding a tablet and looking deeply unimpressed. There's a problem, she says, with calf identification. You groan. Again, she nods. It's worse. We think someone's hiding calves. You blink, as in, physically she tilts the tablet toward you. It contains a tally line for 5 calves belonging to a prominent herder, but the count rechecked yesterday now shows 2 fewer. Mainstream historical fact: livestock counts weren't just for ritual. They determined taxes, fodder allowances, even breeding permissions. Undercounting calves was a known trick to reduce temple dues. Clay records from sites like Lagash and Sipar include audit notes like calves not present at inspection, owner claims wandering. Do you suspect a scribe error, you ask? She shakes her head. We suspect the old tattoo rumor might be true. You remember the tavern whisper? Secret calf tattoos, hidden in folds of skin, used to switch ownership mid-audit. So now you're involved in an investigation. That's what happens when you do your job too accurately. They trust you. You're sent back to the pens again, armed with a fresh tablet and an assistant who keeps saying things like, let's be discreet. And we're not accusing, we're just asking very precise questions. You begin recounting the calf pen. Most of the calves are uncooperative. One headbutts your knee, another sneezes into your stylus hand. You pause in front of a calf with a patchy coat and a strange pattern under its left ear. Not a brand, not a temple mark, something deliberate. Gula appears at your elbow like a summoned spirit. You see it, don't you? You nod. It's there. That's not natural patterning. That's a mark. He glances around. Problem is, it doesn't match any of the temple's recorded symbols. Quirky tidbit. Some non-temple families develop private branding systems, combinations of nicks, notches, or ink patterns to identify livestock lines. These were often invisible to scribes unless animals were checked closely, and they were almost never declared to tax authorities. You start inspecting more closely. 4 calves bear similar symbols under the chin, behind the shoulder, near the base of the tail. All small, faint, but undeniably man-made. You note them on your tablet carefully, not accusing, just recording. The assistant whispers, this could mean the count was manipulated. That these calves are rotated between herders, depending on which one's being audited. You raise an eyebrow. They're sharing calves, like taxes on legs, she mutters. Open scholarly debate. There's a growing theory among economic historians that shared livestock ownership, while not officially sanctioned, was widespread in ancient Mesopotamia. Cow loaning may have been used to inflate wealth, avoid taxes, or fulfill tribute quotas across multiple families. You finish logging the tagged calves. In the margin you write, symbols observed, ownership ambiguous, audit pending. By the end of the inspection, the assistant thanks you and returns to the temple with the updated tablet. You suspect someone's going to have a very awkward conversation involving a priest, a calf, and a stylus, used in a very accusatory way. You linger at the fence, watching the calves do calf things, chew straw, trip over their own legs, moo, without purpose. None of them seem particularly conspiratorial. Gula leans next to you. Imagine being a calf. Just born, can't walk right, and already a cog in the great temple machine. I didn't even know my own name at that age, you say. Exactly. But these ones tax fugitives before they can blink. He holds up a tiny twig. You think we should start tattooing scribes next, Mark, the ones who fudge columns? I'd need a second stylus. He laughs. You log one final note, temple, to develop tattoo verification guidelines. Suggest torchlit checks and read ink testing. Also suggest more sleep. The sun begins to dip behind the ziggurat. You gather your things, wondering which calf you'll meet next week wearing someone else's name, and whether in the end any of us really belong to our ledgers or just dance between them. It's supposed to be a normal afternoon audit, a sleepy pen-side task involving tallying and verifying already counted cows. Instead, it becomes a disaster of identity. You're handed a list of animals to verify, standard practice to ensure no ghost cows have appeared between audits. The pen contains 14 animals. You have 14 animals listed. Easy. Then someone says, "That's a goat." You freeze. You glance up at the beast in question. It's goatish, smallish, curved horns, angular eyes, but the tail's too short, the ears too rounded, the voice suspiciously bass for a goat. You consult your tablet, entry 7. Cow, young, 1 year, marked left ear. The animal does have a left ear, Nick. But the shape, the build, the attitude. Please tell me I didn't log a goat as a cow, you mutter. You logged a goat as a temple cow, someone corrects. You sit down. Mainstream historical fact. While it sounds far-fetched, ancient Mesopotamian audit records occasionally reveal corrected errors in species classification. Livestock, especially young animals, could be miscategorized if branding marks or physical development stages weren't properly noted. You examine the creature again. It stares at you with eyes that suggest it knows you made the mistake and likes it. It was small when I logged it, you argue to Gula, who's now leaning over your shoulder with the exact face of someone who lives for this drama. Still is, he says. Just goat small. You check the next animal, a cow, obviously. No confusion, then the next, then the one after that, until you reach another goat-shaped cow. No, you whisper. Yes, Gula confirms. 2 of them. Same brand marks, same entry code. You logged them as cows. They were accepted as cows. They even got hay-like cows. You've been hoodwinked, Gula says, by Team Goat. Quirky tidbit. A clay tablet from the temple complex at Eshnuna includes a side note reading, "This entry was reviewed by 3 scribes and still turned out to be a goat. May Marduk forgive us." Open scholarly debate. Some historians believe livestock misidentification was sometimes intentional, an attempt to pass off smaller, cheaper animals for higher taxable ones. Others blame poor lighting, fast-moving herds, or stylus fatigue. You take a deep breath, scratch out the original cow entry, carve a careful correction beneath it. Species revised, animal identified as goat, disguised, possibly complicit. You step back. We need to recheck the whole pen. Gula groans, now yeah. Before the temple starts praying over someone's future cheese factory. You move through the herd, reassessing horn curvature, tail-length vocalizations. You record 2 more borderline cases. Ambiguous bovine 75% cow, wool texture, irregular, maybe goat cosplaying. It's absurd, it's exhausting, but it's also somehow thrilling. because you realize this is the gray zone of record-keeping, not the tidy columns and sacred cows. This is where the real scribes prove their worth by noticing when the lines between truth and error start to blur. By the end of the afternoon, your tally has been completely revised. The pen now contains 11 cows, 3 goats, 2 with minor cow envy. You log a new symbol you invent on the spot, a wedge with 2 curves and a dot above your private shorthand for identity crisis resolved. Gula claps you on the shoulder. They'll laugh at this in the tavern for weeks. Let them. At least, we didn't bless a goat. He raises an eyebrow. Didn't we? You both look at one of the culprits standing solemnly beneath the shadow of a temple torch, munching straw with unsettling serenity. You shake your head. No more counting today. No more goats today. You walk away with your tablet tucked under your arm, its surface covered in corrections, half apologies, and one very confused animal's biography. Because in the end, what matters is not just what you record, but whether you're willing to admit when the cows were never cows at all. Just as you think you've earned a quiet day, maybe inventorying saddle straps, or categorizing Temple Ink recipes, another assignment arrives like a wet sandal to the face. The birthing tally is overdue. You stare at the messenger blankly. What he hands you, a fresh clay tablet and a stylus still warm from the sun. New calves were born last night. They need immediate record-keeping. Of course they do. You head to the birthing pen where the air is thick with hay dust. New milk scent and the kind of silence that only follows extreme mooing. Inside the pen is chaos. Calves stumble around on wobbly legs, mothers lick them like obsessive scroll restorers, and herders try to maintain order with a kind of frantic reverence. Your job, figure out who belongs to whom when they were born, and whether they're temple-bound, tithe-bound, or still under discussion. Mainstream historical fact. Newborn calves in ancient Babylonian herds were often recorded within hours of birth, not just to confirm population growth, but because birth order could affect temple allocation, taxation, and future labor planning. Some records included time of birth approximations, especially for animals destined for ritual use. A herder waves you over. This one came just before moonset, he says, pointing to a shaky-legged calf with a triangle-shaped white mark on its forehead. It's mother's over there, or maybe her. He gestures at 2 cows that look equally exhausted and equally annoyed at being accused. Which one was licking it, you ask? Both, he says. It was a community effort. You make a note. Calf. Born moonset. Temple candidate. Maternal claim disputed. Community cow, you move on. Another calf, still damp, stumbles into your leg and bleats like a goat with performance anxiety. Born at dawn, the herder says. Already tried to nurse from a bull. She's unique. You mark her as calf, too confused. Possibly genius. Tag pending. Quirky tidbit. Some scribes assign personality descriptors to newborns based on early behavior. A surviving tally lists one calf as brave, another as angry, and a third as fond of shadows. Whether this had legal standing or was just scribe flair is still debated. Halfway through the pen, things go sideways. You find a calf with 2 birthmarks, one on the left ear, one on the right flank, each corresponding to a different herd's branding. 2 herders immediately begin arguing. One says the calf is his, citing the ear notch. The other points out the flank pattern and claims it's a genetic inheritance clear as the moon on barley water. You step between them. Can a calf be born to 2 cows? They both say yes far too quickly. Open scholarly debate. While most Babylonian birth tallies assigned calves to individual mothers, some records suggest dual-claim calves existed, especially when large communal herds were involved. It's unclear whether these were biological quirks, co-parenting arrangements, or political compromises. You mark the calf carefully. Calf 6, dual claimed. Pending mediator, shows no allegiance. The day grows hotter, the calves louder. You record 22 new births with notes ranging from fidgety and proud to believes in walls. You add a personal flair, a double dot symbol for calves whose futures are likely dramatic. At the end of the session, a temple scribe arrives to cross-check your count. He flips your tablet, slowly squints at calf 9, possibly reincarnated ox, and raises an eyebrow. She tried to stamp on a ceremonial incense tray, you explain. He nods. Noted. As he leaves, Gula sidles up beside you. You look like someone who's been personally insulted by hooves. I've been emotionally profiled by 22 mammals in under 2 hours. Did you use the personality symbols I invented? 3 new ones. He looks impressed. Your legend grows. You sit on a broken fence rail and look over your tally. Each calf is just a collection of curves and wedges, but you know their faces now, their little quirks. They're distinct. I'm going to chew on your tunic personalities. You add one last line, final count verified. Calves alive, mostly alert, spiritually pending. And as you press your stylus into the corner, your own quiet signature, you realize these aren't just cows. They're chapters, tiny hoofed beginnings etched into history. And you were there from their very first sneeze. You're barely off calf duty when a temple runner intercepts you again. This one looks particularly apologetic, which is never a good sign. They need you for the divine consistency audit, she says. You stare at her like she's just handed you a tablet made of snakes. I'm sorry, she adds, already backing away. You mutter a prayer to every deity you can remember and make your way toward the high courtyard where the celestial auditors wait. Now, divine consistency is what happens when the temple cross-references livestock records with ritual calendars and omens. It's not just about whether a cow exists, it's about whether she should exist. According to the stars, the moon, and possibly the mood of the senior priest that morning. Mainstream historical fact. Temples in Babylon maintained complex calendars that intertwined religious rites, celestial events, and livestock obligations. Some animals were tied to planetary cycles or festivals, and their presence or absence could trigger ritual responses, tax deferments, or even political decisions. You arrive to find a priest crouched over a star chart, squinting as though Jupiter itself is playing tricks on him. Your herd count from 2 weeks ago, he says, holding a tablet you recognize instantly your work. We believe it conflicts with astral expectations. You blink. Astral expectations. He points to a line of text on a clay ephemeris. Venus was in ascension. We should have received 2 speckled heifers. You logged none. You try to remain calm. There were no speckled heifers. There were speckled goats, and one muddy cow that looked like a heifer briefly when the light hit her sideways. That does not satisfy the stars, the priest intones. Quirky tidbit. One Babylonian omen text explicitly links cow behavior to divine messages. It reads, if a white cow moos under Mars, war comes. If a cow refuses grass during Jupiter's rise, the fields will yield famine. Cows were more than meat. They were walking barometers of cosmic favor. The audit continues. A junior priest reads your entry for a hiccup-prone bull and asks, was this hiccup rhythmic? You stare. It was persistent. They nod gravely. May suggest lunar misalignment. Gula appears at your side again and whispers, you should have said it hiccuped in 3s. That aligns with sacred harmony. You hiss back, why didn't you tell me that 2 weeks ago? I thought you'd sleep through this audit. Silly me. Open scholarly debate. Some believe that divine audits were often used to retroactively adjust inventories to fit religious needs, especially when shortfalls needed celestial justification. Others argue that scribes sincerely tried to match records to ritual expectations, fearing divine wrath or, worse, priestly disappointment. You're handed another slab, the lunar tally, and asked to align it with your actual herd count from the pen behind the temple. You head back, tablet in hand, brain reeling. As you stand before the herd, it happens again. You see her Kish's regret. Still uncounted, still smug, still sacred. Probably. You mutter, "How many lives do you have?" She blinks slowly, like a star in Taurus. You log her as speckled, timely, possibly Venus approved. When you return to the priests, you hand in the revised count. You've added 2 entries: cow, a belated speckling, divine appearance, courtyard pen, cow B, retroactively sacred, consistent with current Venus alignment. The senior priest reads the entries, nods, balance is restored. You suppress a laugh and a groan. You've just time-traveled backward with cow logic. Somehow it worked. As the audit concludes, you walk away with your stylus twirling in your fingers, wondering what it all meant. Gula catches up. "So they said Venus demands speckles," he snorts. "Next time we'll just dye the cows." You smirk. "Next time I'm switching to frogs, less bureaucracy." He stops. "You haven't read the frog audit scrolls, have you?" "No." He pats your shoulder. "Don't." That night, under a full moon, you finish your final note: divine count accepted. Ritual consistency preserved. Herd compliant with the cosmos. Then, in a whisper, small wedge in the corner, also the cow sneezed under Jupiter. Interpret as needed. The sun is barely up, but the air already smells like scorched hay and tension. You're summoned again, not to count, not to audit, but to preserve. The temple has designated today as Firing Day, the day when tablets from the season's work are hardened in clay kilns to protect them from rain rodents, and as one official mutters, overly curious goats. It's your first time witnessing the process, and you're nervous. One wrong move and all those hours of careful tallying. Your wedge marks, your baby calf notes, your sacred hiccup entries could shatter into permanent forgetfulness. Mainstream historical fact: Babylonian scribes would sometimes fire their most important clay tablets, especially those stored long-term in temple archives. This hardened the clay, making the text durable for centuries. Many of the tablets we now study survive only because they were fired either intentionally or during building fires. You arrive to see stacks of tablets resting on stone slabs drying in the morning heat. Scribes bustle around comparing glyphs, double-checking wedge depths, and smoothing the edges of important entries with damp cloths. Gula waves you over. "We're up next." Your calf roster made the cut. You nod, clutching your wrapped tablet a little tighter. What's the process, Fire? Prayers, a lot of watching, and a few arguments about kiln temperature. You spot the kiln, a wide, squat dome built from sun-dried bricks and lined with glowing embers. A priest stands by with a bundle of herbs which he waves over the opening like incense. Someone else is humming what you're told is the official preservation chant. You know Gula says if your wedge depth is too shallow, the marks can disappear in the heat. You lose whole cows. Don't tell me that now. He grins. You hand your tablet over to the kiln master, a soot-covered man with precise hands and a 1,000-yard stare. He inspects your work, nods, and gently lays it on a slab beside 3 others. The fire roars. Quirky tidbit: a fired tablet from Nippur bears the mark of a cow hoof, likely made after the tablet was laid down to dry, but before it was fired. The hoofprint, now preserved forever, is affectionately known among archaeologists as the cow who edited. The heat is intense, the smoke sharp. You back away and watch. Slowly the tablets darken, moisture hisses out. The clay turns from soft brown to hard ochre. Your calf names, your divine cow entries. Even the goat in disguise, all of it bakes into permanence. You feel a strange mix of pride and panic. It's one thing to tally a cow, it's another to know your tally is now history. Open scholarly debate. There's disagreement about how selective the firing process was. Some argue only the most critical documents, tax records, ritual inventories, legal agreements were preserved this way. Others believe batches were often random, based more on space and time than hierarchy. One of the junior scribes lets out a groan. His tablet cracked. Too wet, the kiln master mutters. He rushed the drying. The scribe slumps. You glance at your own slab, still intact, still legible. You feel a rush of relief. Your writing, your lines, your thoughts etched by stylus and sweat, they will last. After an hour, the kiln cools enough to remove the first batch. The master handles your tablet like it's a newborn, hands it back to you. The clay is still warm, the symbols now forever. Gula peeks over your shoulder. Look at that. Solid. Not a single smear. I'm a permanent part of bureaucracy now, you murmur. You always were. Now you're just kiln certified. You leave the chamber with the fired tablet wrapped carefully, heading back toward the archive. You'll file it in its new home among thousands of others, all whispering stories of cows, goats, storms, lies, and laughter. On the way, you pause to carve one more thing on the back of your tablet, small and crooked. I was here. I counted carefully, even the ones that ran. The season is nearly over. You've stopped sweating the moment you pick up your stylus. Your back still aches, your knees still complain, but your hands move over clay like they've always known how to do this. You no longer need to double-check the wedge for calf. You just feel it. There's one final tally to complete the ceremonial wrap-up count. Every cow, calf, ox, and honorary goat is to be confirmed one last time and logged onto a single tablet known simply as the Ledger of Closure. The morning is crisp. The pen's quiet. Even the cows seem to understand the importance. No mooing, just chewing, reflective chewing. Mainstream historical fact. Seasonal audits often ended with comprehensive summary tablets. These were dense, often double-sided, and stored with special indicators, sometimes colored clay slips, or divine seals denoting their significance for tax ritual or succession planning. You're handed a new flawless slab of clay, no cracks, smooth as river mud, perfect for finality. You start writing. You begin with the temple herd, each cow logged by number and roll milk sacrifice breeding. You leave extra space for those with unclear spiritual affiliations, and give a generous margin to the hiccup bull just in case. Then the domestic cows, broken into ownership tiers based on their tribute value. A few names jump out: the double-claimed calf, the invisibly offered white cow, the prophetic limp bull. You record them all. And yes, Kish's regret makes the list. Again. Gula passes, reads over your shoulder, and whistles. You gave her her own row. She earned it, you say. Quirky tidbit. Some scribes snuck poems or jokes into seasonal ledgers hidden in the margins or inside rarely used glyphs. One tablet concludes with a phrase that loosely translates to, "May these numbers please the gods and confuse my replacement." Halfway through, you notice something strange. You're smiling. You didn't expect that. Not after all the chasing, sweating, arguing over decimal separators, getting sneezed on by divine offerings. But here it is a quiet warmth, not the fire of pride, just comfort, clarity, a sense that this job, as absurd and earthy as it is, matters. You finish the last row: 22 newborn calves, 3 disputed ownerships, 1 sacred goat later demoted, 1 cow whose personality was listed as weather-sensitive. You sign the bottom in your stylus mark. Press your thumb to the corner. Then, for good measure, you add your newest invention, a final glyph. Not temple-approved, just yours. It looks like a wedge curled into a resting cow. It means all counted, all witnessed, all well. Open scholarly debate. Some of the most beloved tablets in Babylonian archives feature personal flourishes, from scribes' marks that suggest not just function, but affection. Scholars argue that these symbols are what turn data into memory. As you deliver the tablet, the archivist nods silently and stores it behind a carved stone panel labeled Season 44, Southern Herd Audit Verified. You stand there a moment longer than you need to, listening, not for cows, but for the absence of them, for the echo of peace. Outside, the sun is setting. Gula joins you at the temple steps, 2 mugs in hand. You done fully, you say. He hands you a drink. Did you leave the hiccup cow in again? I left her a whole footnote. He laughs. You're a romantic. You sip. The sky turns purple. Somewhere behind you, the last cow of the season moos. Just once. Then silence. You lean back, close your eyes, and breathe deep. You've done the work, and the work will stay. So now, listener, the sun sets over ancient Babylon. The scribes return to their homes, their ink-stained fingers finally still their styluses tucked away until the next cycle. The cows curl into their pens, hooves folded beneath them, bellies full, and minds empty of bureaucratic concerns. Somewhere in a silent archive, your tally rests, among thousands burnt into clay, cooled by the hand of time. Your numbers, your glyphs, your hesitant wedge marks, they're all there, part of a story that hums just below the surface of history. The herd you counted will live and breathe in the quiet of that room pressed into stone, not just as cattle, but as evidence that someone was there. Someone noticed, someone tried to make sense of hoof and horn and hiccup. And you were that someone. The fire's out now, the pen is still, the ink no longer smudges. You did your part, scribe, and now you can rest. Let your mind soften like warm clay. Let the numbers fade gently. Let the stars above Babylon blink you into sleep. All is counted, all is quiet, all is well. End of script. Sweet dreams.